You are watching Illume TV, Igniting the Heart's Intelligence. I'm Kelly Marlowe. Today I'm talking with Eileen McKusick. She uses vibrational sound therapy to heal physical and emotional imbalances in people. For example, sound frequencies are used in medicine to break up kidney stones. Her technique focuses on locating our energy imbalances. She has written a book called Tuning the Human Biofield, where she discusses her 19 years of experience in this area. Eileen's here today to share her unique approach or science of how it works and how you can benefit from it. This is part 2 of the 2-part series. So what struck me about the master healers I've interviewed, including you, is the quality of deep listening and the quality of awareness that you bring to the people that come to you. How is yours different in terms of using the biofield compared to, let's say, someone working with Reiki or other source of energy patterns that they're listening to or looking for?
Well, what I think is really neat for me about the tuning forks is that they provide an objective reference point of what we're encountering. So biofield tuning isn't so different from a therapeutic method called therapeutic touch, where the practitioner will use their hands, they wave their hands around the body and they're sensing for these areas of dense, stuck energy and using their hands to move and integrate that, okay? But the tuning forks produce such an obvious dissonance. It isn't so subtle that only I can hear it. I can be teaching a classroom of 12 people, and it's obvious to everybody when we hit an area of heavy distortion. So the person on the table, I might get this far off of their shoulder, and all of a sudden you hear all of this noise and distortion in the tone. So what that does is it makes it real for them that something is really happening. It's different than if I was just using my hand. So I think that it provides this sort of objective medium that makes listening more specific almost, because different ailments really do sound different ways. When I first started, I would hear noise or static. But now, after 19 years of listening, I've learned that, this particular noise or static is an arthritic joint, or this is a spinal subluxation, or this is a rib out of place, or a uterine fibroid, or a pulled muscle. So there, all of these things, if you think about everything in the body is in motion, and everything that's in motion makes noise. We might not hear it, right? So, from your car, right? If everything's operating smoothly, then it's pretty quiet. It makes, the right kind of sound. If something breaks, right? And it's not, you have a wheel bearing, all of a sudden you start having this thunk, 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 right? So the car, it's not functioning properly and it's making noise. And the human body is the same way. If everything is operating smoothly, then it doesn't make noise. But if something starts to break down, then the waves that it's propagating are chaotic. And the tuning forks interface with that. Everybody's had the experience of getting a bad vibe off of somebody. We don't tend to think that we're actually propagating waves. But if, when you have fear or exertion and you can hear your heart, you think, oh, anybody's close to me, they're going to, and they sense that, right? Animals sense it because we're just continually emitting vibes, and, horses sense our vibes, and dogs and cats and kids, It's just especially as adults, we tend to get so caught up in words, and we're just kind of thinking about words and responding to words. We don't really realize how much of the exchange that's going on is on a vibrational level.
So is the healing more specific as well in terms of being able to fine-tune it to that particular problem compared to, let's say, touch or other modalities?
I think so. I find that the sound, because we're working with the physics principles, as far as I can tell, of what's called resonance and entrainment. So initially the tuning forks will resonate with whatever noise is present. But then just through the input of this coherent oscillation, we are entraining the body into a more coherent expression. So there's, I've got physics on my side when I'm working with the tuning forks in a way that I do to some degree if I'm working with my hands. I think a lot of healers will say that they're like a tuning fork, and part of the role of a healer is for you to be as healthy as you can be so that your own coherence is informing the coherence or the organization of the person you're working with. But the tuning forks just kind of take that and bring it to a whole new level because they're just inherently organized and inherently coherent. And the body really responds to that.
So what's the most valuable information you have ever decoded or been able to pinpoint?
Well, I think the most valuable thing that I've ever decoded is this discovery that underneath all of our noise, under our heavy energies, our sad stories, our ancestral inheritances of what have you, and there are so many of those. Underneath all of that, I found this essential, perfect harmony in everybody. And that was really surprising to me when, in the very beginning, when I first started discovering this harmony, that everyone had it. Because I think that, without realizing it in our culture, we sort of have this belief in our own imperfection, our own sort of guilty sinner sort of thing. And I think as a consequence of that, and that's a subconscious belief that I think most people hold without having any idea that they're holding it, and it creates a sense of not worthy of wholeness, not worthy of health, not worthy of being a whole, harmonic, graceful being. And most of the disorders that I find in people all are traceable back to this belief that they're not worthy. And it's just not true. Just by virtue of how we're made, what we are, we're totally worthy. And that was a really exciting discovery. And it's been really neat to see, as I work through people's traumas and difficulty, and we get through the noise, that this underlying beauty arises. That is, there's a grace and a redemption there, which actually gives me a huge amount of hope for humanity, because I know that harmony is there, and that potential for humans to embody that harmony is there.
So with the help of this modality, everyone could return to that state?
I believe that is possible, yeah.
So noise. Can you tell me, people self-talk, and there's so much noise going on in our heads and our bodies, and which is what you're picking up. Can you give me a sense of how that works and what people can do in terms of, is it something that they're doing unconsciously, or is it something that they can change by just having an understanding of the noise they're creating in their own body and in the biofield?
What I find is that most people seem to have a construct I call the inner critic, which is a very unkind and often abusive inner voice that is always telling them they're not good enough in some way or another. And it creates a lot of static in the field. Basically I feel like essentially human beings are harmonic beings. And that when we can come to a point of stillness, when we resolve this noise in our minds, and we resolve this noise and static in the signal in our fields, that we can come to a place of more inner peace and harmony. And we also are much more able to recognize the essential oneness of everything. We become very self-limited through the inner critic, through believing in our own limitations. A lot of people have what I call self-limiting beliefs that were formed, under the age of 7. You might have grown up in a home where when you were a baby, you cried and you weren't fed and you weren't held. And then as you grew older, your parents believed that children should be seen and not heard. And as a consequence, you formed a belief that nobody cares what you have to say, and you feel very disempowered as a consequence, right? So that's a self-limiting belief that was formed before you were even conscious that it was formed, and you've encountered numerous experiences that have reinforced that. So it's become very fixed in your field. And that, what I find is that belief carries on the tone of your voice, right? I mean, we've all had the experience of somebody saying something and we just disregard them, right? And it's just their story. And then there's other people who speak and we absolutely hang on every word they say. And what is the difference in those two people? And I'll tell you, the difference is that one person believes that they're worthy of being heard and that people will listen to them, and that is carried in their tone. And then the other person doesn't believe it, right? And then they've just got noise of this self-reinforcing thing. So we have all of these beliefs that are actual structures within our biofield. And we experience life through the lens of all of these vibratory patterns within our field. So everything kind of has to pass through the lens of these beliefs. And so people who have been successful in eliminating noise and eliminating self-limiting beliefs start to experience themselves as quiet and limitless, right? We've all had the experience of being around someone who's very quiet inside, and how you immediately become more calm when you're with them. And, they're very, very organized. Their car is clean. Their home is clean. They're efficient and organized, right? That person doesn't have a lot of static going on. But if people have had a lot of trauma, or they're in a lineage that's had a lot of trauma, you look in their cars and they're full of trash, and their homes are full of chaos, and their lives are full of stress and drama, right? And that's all just in their field.
So is it going from limiting self-talk to being quiet, or is it to positive self-talk?
Well, one of the things, when I started discovering this harmony in everybody, inherent in that harmony is greatness. It's amazingness. I mean, really, what I was discovering was like everybody that I was working on was amazing, was awesome, was great. But didn't believe that about themselves, right? They didn't have an inner dialogue that said, I'm amazing, I'm awesome, I'm great, because we've been so conditioned to not think that way. And that's a big hurdle to get over. And we would say, oh, well, that's narcissistic, right? And you don't want to be a narcissist. So you have to be a good person, and you have to beat yourself up. and what I've learned is, what I've come to see through this, because I see how everybody is awesome and amazing, and I'm no different from anybody else. Therefore, I know that I am awesome and amazing. But I also know that you're awesome and amazing, and that everybody is inherently. Like, I don't think I'm any better than you. I know we're all kind of built from the same blueprint, and that's the truth of it, right? So, but for me to actually get over that hurdle, to be able to lose that mean inner critic and, replace it with a loving voice that is, like how you'd want your mom to be, to be absolutely loving and supportive. I've been saying to people lately, fire your inner critic and hire an inner coach. And your inner coach, the difference is the tone. Like, your inner coach is going to hold you to that ideal of being the best you can be, but is going to do it in a really loving, nourishing, supportive way. Is going to believe in your inherent greatness and support you to get there.
And then that will vibrate into your beliefs and into the noise that you're creating within the biofield.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because I'll tell you what, the tone of that inner critic, it's like a growl, it's not a pleasant tone. And then, when we have an inner critic, we tend to externalize that, to our partner or to our kids, right? It comes out of us. It's not just about our own inner thing, but we emanate that. If you have a healthy, nourishing, loving, peaceable relationship with yourself, you're going to have that with everybody else, right?
Right.
I mean, whenever we encounter somebody who's angry or hostile or ugly or mean, that's what their inner relationship with themselves is all about. So we look at all of this hostility out in the world, but it's really all about relationship with self. It's really all about that construct of that inner critic. And we either externalize it and blame and point fingers, or we internalize it and slowly eat away at our insides with disease and other, health issues.
Okay, so we all have a blueprint for wholeness, for harmony, for peace. And you had mentioned earlier, before the interview, that this blueprint in our body leaves us when there's there's something off, right? There's this soreness in how there's something that's not quite right in our body.
Yeah. So when, the blueprint, we have a essential blueprint that our body refers to when it is continually renewing itself, right? Because your cells are in constant renewal. And so in order to do that correctly and maintain your order, structure, and function, right, they have to be referring to this light matrix that you're built on, right? It's a science of biophotons, which is the sort of recognition that we have a light speed signaling system of information that underlies our sort of chemical and mechanical structure, okay? But we could also call this mind. And so when we become unbalanced in our mind, we become unbalanced in our body. So just an example, the second chakra on the right side holds that inner critic that I was talking about, the guilt, the shame. And I recently treated someone who had Crohn's disease, and he was experiencing a breakdown in his digestive system in that region of his body. And what I discovered was that he had a habit of what I call rewind and review. He'd go to bed every night and he'd lie there and he would beat himself up for everything he said or he didn't say or he did or he didn't do, and he would just like put himself through the ringer of guilt. So he was, instead of his biofield, his energy, his biomagnetic energy body being in a balanced place, nourishing and supporting his physical body, he was energizing the state of mind, the imbalanced state of mind of overwrought guilt. So that was, hanging out 8, 10, 12 inches off his right hip. And so what was happening was that chi, that energy, that magnetism was being sequestered off the body, and the body started to break down. Its order, structure, and function started to fall apart because it didn't have a clear blueprint to restore itself to. And so part of working with him was getting him to start to become aware of what he was doing and how destructive that was to his body and how connected it was to his Crohn's disease. And as, we adjusted that electromagnetic patterning, the sound, it's kind of like a chiropractic adjustment. We just find it where it's hanging out and use the sound almost like a magnet to move that energy into a centered place, right? So it's sort of giving him a leg up to get into that centered place. And then I had him be aware of what he was doing and start to, have an inner coach instead of an inner critic, be loving, be supportive, be nourishing to himself. And immediately his symptoms started to improve.
So then he's able to return back to the original blueprint of wholeness rather than having all this noise cover it. He doesn't know what it looks like and what's going on.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then the body starts to fix itself. What I've found is that this is a shortcut. It's treating the field, treating at the level of mind and at the level of subtle energy. To me, when we're working with the blueprint, and in Western medicine currently treats the symptoms, even something like chiropractic, you've gone out of alignment. Well, why did you go out of alignment in the first place? Magnetic fields guide electric currents. And if your magnetic field has a torque in it from a bicycle accident you had 15 years ago, your pelvis is going to keep being rotated this way. And you can go keep getting adjustments to put it back. But if you go see a biofield tuner at the same time you're seeing chiropractic, and that person adjusts the torque in your magnetic field, and the chiropractor adjusts the physiology, then you're not going to go out anymore. So the field is really causative. And if we treat the field, then the body fixes itself. So it adds huge amounts of efficiency to the process of healing. It isn't a substitute for anything that we've already got. It simply enhances. Basically, it makes everything work better. When we shift the magnetic field, then chiropractic works better, massage works better, surgeries heal faster. I'm not quite sure about how it works with drug interactions, but it could potentially improve efficacy of that. So it doesn't take away from anything that already is. It just adds another dimension on top of what we're already doing. That for me really just adds a lot of efficiency to healing, and also. Once we recognize and align with our potential, then for me, it potentially accelerates the evolution of human consciousness as well. You know, where can we go without the noise and the signal? Where can we go once we've healed a lot of this ancestral burden that we're carrying? You know, when we've integrated that, when we've harmonized that, and we're working from a place of greater wholeness, what does that open up as far as human potential goes?
And unified human potential.
Unified human potential, because ultimately when we dissolve the static and the noise and the blocks and all of that, we really see that all is one. And when we've quieted the inner critic and we've developed a healthier relationship with ourselves, it's easier to have healthier relationships with other people. So, you know, I do hold a vision of harmonizing the whole planet and all of humanity. You know, I know that that's a really lofty vision, but I see the possibility and the potential that is inherent here.
It would be wonderful if we live in a world where everyone felt completely whole and harmonious. Eileen, thank you for sharing this possibility with us today.